Hello there, my name is Vintusius, and today, after having done quite a bit of 11.2 PTR deep diving and testing, as well as having asked fellow friends and colleagues what their choice of mains are going to be for the next season, I come to you with a list of the 10 coolest specs we agreed look the most fun to play for this upcoming season, mostly thanks to their new tier sets. Keep in mind that this is not a tier list and the order of presented specs is totally random, since the list was made by looking at gameplay, fun factor including new sets, as well as aesthetics, and that's how I landed on 4 melee specs, 4 ranged ones, as well as 1 healer and 1 tank. One more thing, since I've mentioned tier set bonuses, 11.2 brings us something unique in terms of set bonuses, as they are this time around tied to your chosen hero talent instead of your class specialization, meaning that you can in fact have 2 different set bonuses when playing a fire mage if you were to swap talents from Frostfire to Sun Fury. And since that has been a big factor in creating this list, I will be mentioning the classes and specs with their specific hero talents of choice. Let's begin. Shadow Priests continued their streak of receiving their 12th or whatever number rework we are currently at. All jokes aside, changes they received this time around are very positive, mainly thanks to their Shadow Crash updates making it easier to deal with AoE packs in dungeon settings. But one thing that is certain is that their visual swag is out of this world, because, you know, so is the Void. Right? I'll see myself out. We can't talk, however, about their visuals without mentioning their new Archon tier sets, as they are the reason they have the ability to cast up to 5 expanding and retracting Void Halos with one single global, making up for quite the interstellar experience. However, that does come with the added perk of allowing you to cut your friend's FPS in raid by half. Don't worry too much about the FPS thing though, as the 11.2 patch also comes with a new feature which allows you to reduce the amount of particles you see from friendly players, thus helping you with this potential FPS issue in very large raid settings. Although Archon wins out with the grand scope of its visuals, Voidweaver isn't exactly worst off and likely to be the go-to choice of most Shadow Priests in terms of performance and most content, simply because, while Giga Void Halos are cool, Voidweaver's growing dark holes that expand as a result of gameplay interactions as well as chase your enemies isn't exactly a bad second choice either. It might even be cooler to play when it comes to gameplay, but I'll let you be the judge of that. Evokers, as of today, still are the least played class in the entire game, for reasons that, while understandable, as it comes down to the not entirely approved by most Drakthir model on top of the general inability to wear transmog. Why is that sad though? Well, because their general gameplay design is sleek to say the least, and when it comes down to the Devastation DPS spec, their visual feedback is amongst the flashiest, if not the most flashy, currently in the entire game, thanks to its upcoming Scale Commander tier set, which is what I'll be showcasing you today. You get to Deep Breath Onyxia style every 30 to 40 seconds, then land with your very own Dragon Squad. And what's better than channeling a Beam of Death, or 3? Well, 5 of course, for added style points. What else is there to know? The rotation is straightforward, simple and effective, as thanks to the visual feedback and impact of everything you see on screen, it's very simple to pick up and pilot it into effectiveness. And even though it may look simple, the skill ceiling of the spec isn't as low as you might think, thanks to how extending your Dragon Rage cooldown works, making use of your lower cast range than other casters, or making full use of your mastery, which is a reverse execute and favors frequent target swaps. If you can get past the Drakthir look, there's never been a better moment to try out a Devastation Evoker. Thanks to its upcoming tier set, Frostfire Frost Mages can finally live out their fantasy of a Song of Ice and Fire. Well, at least someone will, right? Even though casting fire comets when casting frost ones was decent so far, it was missing some proper spice, I would say. But now, thanks to the tier set which will allow you to burn your enemies through both comet storms and glacial spikes alike by auto-casting Pyroblast with each cast, effectively applying Fire Mage's Ignite effect to them, which was previously unique to that spec. Additionally, there have been some improvements in the gameplay flow of Frost Mages going into the 3rd season, especially in your AoE rotation, making it a bit more coherent and intuitive on when to use what ability. If you want to live out your fantasy of becoming the prince that was promised, now is your chance to do so. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it. There's a reason Retribution Paladins are currently the most popular spec in the game, beating even Beast Mastery hunters. For a vast majority of the community, the rework Red Paladins received during their Dragonflight expansion has made it fun, flashy, thematic, extremely easy to pick up, and come with the War Within. The Templar hero tree is now the cherry on top. The addition of the ability Hammer of Light, which gives a superb punch to the rotation, while also being able to play builds that basically allow you to have your Paladin wings almost every time you want them, makes it once the fun begins, it kinda never stops. But wait, there's more, as the 11.2 Templar tier set now allows your hammer not only to be much better at cleaving secondary targets, but most importantly, allows you to use it a second time. Why have one hammer when we can have two? If you were previously bullied out of a Red Paladin as a result of maybe Classic or Vanilla, it's time to give it another shot. Surely half the population can't be wrong, right? If you haven't been keeping up with what's up with Elemental these days, let me tell you that it was already a good time to be one. After years of trying to find the right place of how the spec should feel, I'm confident that connoisseurs would agree that it is now, similar to many specs mentioned before, one of the best, if not the best time to be one, thanks to a combined modern rework paired with the superb visuals of the Stormbringer hero tree. And now that we know where we are headed in Season 3, if you like casting big tempests, you're in for a treat. The class plays smoothly, feels strong, has good visuals, and is overall just fun. Having said that, this time around it might be heavily induced with a few layers of RNG, as the whole idea is to get procs into procs that proc your procs, with everything revolving around both having Ascendance and the ability to cast Tempests. While technically this could lead into a feast or famine situation in your gameplay, the amount of various procs and controlled RNG within your rotation should make it so that this is overall still somewhat both controllable and manageable. If you previously felt like a Teemo Thor, now's the time to become its Amazon Prime version. If you've ever wanted to feel like a true Dark Ranger, there's never been a better time to play Marksmanship Hunter. The 11.2 patch gives MM the finishing touch it needed to make the Dark Ranger hero spec work in scenarios outside of raiding, most notably in dungeons and AoE scenarios. With a 1 minute cooldown on its huge nuclear true shot cooldown, on top of Black Arrow itself now applying trick shots, which is what allows you to cleave multiple targets, this makes you able to keep blasting nuclear arrows instead of having to weave in some weak multi-shots in the mix. Overall, there's lots to be excited about for Marksmanship in Season 3. It still remains an extremely easy spec to pick up, but with the added bonus of actually being super strong. Virtually all of the changes are positive for gameplay, with a ton of buffs to current strength and weaknesses alike. Hunter chefs would agree that if you ever wanted to become a Marksmanship Hunter or simply live out your fantasy of being the 56th rendition of Legolas, it's hard to think of a better time to look into it than Season 3 of The War Within. If you've never tried tanking before, maybe this time you actually just might, because Colossus Protection Warrior seemed like the ideal candidate, as it honestly plays like a glorified DPS spec. It has the numbers and a very straightforward DPS rotation, which should feel right at home if you've ever played Arms or Fury before. Too much rage? Go for Ignore Pain. Undiagnosed mental health issues? Go for Ignore Pain. You feel like your life is starting to drop? Might as well press Shield Block and then, you guessed it, Ignore Pain. Then just simply keep pumping and laugh at puny DPSers being below you on the meters, especially when you happen to press your Demolish ability. This is all possible thanks to the combined might of their Season 3 updates and Colossus tier set, which makes it so your bleed damage gives you a surprising amount of self-sustain, something which Protection Warriors were historically never good at. This is how it works. You go and gather mobs you want to hit, press Revenge, which applies the deep wounds dot that makes up for your healing, follow it up with a Demolish, then one shield slam, and that's basically it. As long as you keep the buffed up deep wounds numbers rolling, you'll feel immortal. If you've ever been the kind of DPS player that wanted the tank to pull more and faster, maybe it's time to try out the Colossus Protection Warrior. Put on the gauntlet and do that yourself. I don't know who got the job of designing Mistweaver monks since Dragonflight, but they've been cooking real good for the past 2 years, and the streak of wins honestly just continues, as even though it is one healing spec, their playstyle options of choosing between a more caster build or melee combat make it feel as if you have the choice to pick from 2 different specs instead of one. Throughout Season 2 of The War Within, it's been generally agreed that a caster build with Conduit of the Celestials as the hero talent of choice was best suited for raid encounters, while Master of Harmony and melee combat was more oriented for Mythic Plus dungeons. This time, however, with the upcoming Season 3 tier set bonuses, both hero talents look like they might be more than viable in all content types. And even though in the end, one will likely win over the other in the high end of performance picks, it sure looks like they will allow you to play whatever playstyle fits you best regardless of the content you're doing. Just like in the case of the Prot Warrior, if you're a DPS main, maybe trying out healing by doing damage might be a cool new thing to check out, or maybe at least sympathize with those that constantly have to deal with those headless chickens that are sadly standing in the fire. Frost DKs are looking to be the star of this season of Blizzard's Designers Got Talent, simply because they got the most extensive rework to their talents, which features changing up how the class plays when it comes to their AoE rotation, including the dreaded by most Breath of Sindragosa talent. After years of division amongst Breath haters and lovers, mainly because the optimal way of using it was to more often than not abstain from pressing any runic spending abilities, so that you accidentally don't deplete it too fast, as it would lead to disabling your breath ability, which lasted as long as you had runic power. Now, thanks to the rework, it's finally going to be more intuitive and satisfying to both press and play around it, as it will now get extended through rotational gameplay and both generating and spending procs as fast as possible, rather than having you hold on to globals and avoid pressing keys at the wrong time, which wasn't exactly a super fun dynamic, at least to me. And don't worry, breath haters like myself, even though it's much better than it used to be, you can still play without it if you don't want it, without feeling unviable. While a rework in itself doesn't technically guarantee anything, in this case I'd risk saying it really does, as having played it on the PTR, it's actually something I'd love to play next season myself, and just like many of the classes mentioned in the video before, it feels like it's the best the spec has ever been, so it's more than a good time to check out Frost DK, and we haven't even mentioned the Deathbringer hero talent and its related tier sets, which come as a cherry on top, as it makes the DK thanks to it better at everything it does, while keeping your cities aligned with each other so that you can generally press everything all at once whenever it comes up. Then simply enjoy the visuals of your frozen sites of death. Since their introduction in Legion, Demon Hunters till this day still live with the reputation of being some kind of HDHD, jumpy, one-button emo monkey spec.
Vengeance!
And that couldn't be farther from the truth when looking at Havoc Eldrachi Reaver, which is probably my personal favorite melee DPS spec at the moment. You no longer have to fall off a cliff during combat by using fell rushes all the time. But if you so want to, however, since build around that continue to exist even though they're usually not a DPS increase, at least in dungeons, you generally have access to a much cleaner mechanic that enables it all, known as Vengeful Retreat. Thanks to the Eldrachi tree, using it resets the cooldown of your Fell Blade, which is what allows you to charge to a target, making it possible for you to keep the jumping around feel and playstyle while avoiding all of the negatives tied around it, since you can mostly stay in place to get your buffs by using the Vengeful Retreat into Fell Blade mid-air combo. Contrary to previous class picks I've made, in the case of Demon Hunters, their upcoming tier set isn't a highlight of why you should potentially play one, as it simply passively makes them better at what they were already doing, which was their ability to funnel your DPS into a specific single target while in AoE scenarios. Having said that, that's kind of the point of the showcase. They honestly don't even require new flashy tools, because the class finally feels the way Demon Hunters should have always worked. In my opinion, this is the best Havoc has ever felt to play since its introduction in Legion, and paired with the way it works, which requires you to use correct ability sequences to maximize your DPS output, the class has gone a long way from being a one-button meme spec, at least in the case of the Eldrachi Reaver, as Felscard is definitely the easier choice to play. And that's it. As usual, if you want to support my work, feel free to leave a like and share the video with potentially interested friends. And if you want to see more WoW Season 3 content coming next week, make sure to stay subscribed as I'm working on short raid guides amongst other things. Goodbye.